Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel, so if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land with ILTV, have no worries. It's time for our new show this week in Israel, where we'll give you the scoop on everything you need to know about the last 7 days right from Tel Aviv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, here to keep you informed. Vanity Fair is claiming that U.S. President Donald Trump has shared classified Israeli intelligence with top Russian officials. Now, this is exactly what many suspected back in May when Trump hosted members of Russia's foreign ministry in the White House, allegedly boasting of Israeli intel that ended an ISIS plot to bomb planes using laptops. If this is true, it means Israeli intelligence cooperation has been massively compromised. Trump's open comments on classified Mossad ops in enemy territory would endanger the lives of Israeli agents in the field, and many of whom use secret names and identities. On top of that, for Trump to share this information with Russia, which is Syria's biggest ally, would mean Iran would definitely receive this intel as well. That's apparently why top Israeli military officials, anonymous at this time, have spilled the details of Trump's leak with Vanity Fair. One is even quoted as saying Trump betrayed us. The operation in question involves Israeli agents entering northern Syria and planting a secret listening device within a cell of the Islamic State. That operation went off without a hitch and gave Israel the critical lead that ISIS was intending to attack airplanes using bombs hidden inside laptops. The United States acted quickly with this information with a temporary laptop ban, saving countless lives. But if this new report is true, it means Trump has now put countless Israeli lives in hot water. Now, another controversy is swirling around accusations made by the group Breaking the Silence, an organization that releases the alleged testimonies of former IDF soldiers who accuse the army of human rights violations. An Israeli court has decided that one of the group's members, who claims he beat a Palestinian while he was an IDF soldier in the West Bank, is lying about what he did. But now Breaking the Silence has fired back, releasing a video they say proves him right. Breaking the Silence, which receives most of its funding from abroad, is known for its intense and controversial criticism of Israeli policy in the West Bank, releasing alleged testimonies that the Israeli government believes are totally slanderous and deliberately harmful. That's why the courts have opened an investigation into the story that Dean Issacharoff published online, in which he confesses to allegedly beating a Palestinian he detained in 2014. The state offered evidence that the Palestinian in question denied being beaten and ruled that Issacharoff was lying. Prime Minister Netanyahu celebrated this decision on Facebook, saying, quote, "Breaking the silence, lies and slanders our soldiers around the world. Today, this fact received further proof, if anyone had a doubt." Now, some believe the Prime Minister's celebration may be premature. New evidence offered by Breaking the Silence, including this video of Issacharoff as a soldier in 2014 hauling away a handcuffed Palestinian with bruises, may lend some truth to his claim. The group now claims the state interviewed the wrong Palestinian. Israeli media tracked down the Palestinian seen with Issacharoff in the video, Faisal Natshe, who says he was indeed beaten that day but can't remember by who. The state may choose to reopen this investigation if it sees fit. The Palestinian Authority is claiming that it has frozen all communications with the United States over the White House's recent threat to close down the PLO's D.C. office. But it looks like the Trump administration is rebuffing that claim, saying that in their view, communications are, quote, not frozen. State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert says that conversations will be taking place and that the White House is in fact in contact with Palestinian officials about the status of that PLO office in Washington. Well, over the weekend, the State Department threatened to close down the PLO office because the Palestinians had violated a U.S. law that forbid them from seeking to prosecute Israelis in the International Criminal Court. The infringement came when Abbas addressed the UN General Assembly in September and then urged the ICC to prosecute Israeli officials for their involvement in settlement activities against the Palestinian people. U.S. President Donald Trump now has 90 days to consider whether or not the Palestinians are in direct and meaningful negotiations with Israel. If he decides that they are, then the PLO can keep the office. Here's the issue, though. PA President Mahmoud Abbas isn't having it. A spokesman for the PLO claims Abbas has ordered the PLO to close down all communication lines with the Americans. Confusing, right? Well, for now, it looks like the PLO office in Washington, D.C. is still open and functioning. Now, the case of the missing Lebanese prime minister has taken another dramatic twist. Weeks after Saad Hariri's sudden resignation amidst accusations that he was forced to do so by Saudi Arabia, Hariri has returned to Lebanon. He's announcing that he will not yet step down as prime minister after all. And here to explain is ILTV's Aaron Poor. So, Aaron, why the 180?
It's not exactly clear right at this moment, but if we're going to take all these people at their word, then it would appear Lebanese President Aoun convinced Hariri not to step down after Hariri had returned back to Lebanon, or at least not to step down yet.
Right. Now, and how does this impact Israel?
Well, for one, it means, ideally, the cooling of tensions between Lebanon and regional power in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia. Tensions have been heating up lately with all of the situation that's been going on, and a war, it was seeming as if a war was about to break out, and such a war easily could have dragged Israel into the middle, especially seeing as how, where Israel is geographically, right next to Lebanon, and also the fact that we've been apparently secretly holding cooperative talks with Saudi Arabia and publicly endorsing their fight against Iran and Iranian proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon. But I'll get more into that in my report right now.
لقد عرضت اليوم استقالتي على فخامة الرئيس وقد تمنى علي التريث في تقديمها والاحتفاظ بها لمزيد من التشاور في أسبابها وخلفياتها السياسية فأبديت تجاوب مع هذا التمني.
This reversal is a shocking turn of events irregardless. During his now infamous resignation, he announced that Hezbollah and Iran had infiltrated Lebanon's government and that he feared for his life. Hariri's own father, Rafik, a former prime minister of Lebanon himself, was actually assassinated by Hezbollah for speaking out against the terror group in 2005. That's probably why Hariri made this bombshell announcement while he was in Saudi Arabia, though Lebanon maintains that the reason was because the Saudis were holding him captive. Since then, tensions have been escalating right up to the brink of war between Lebanon and Saudi Arabia. But for Hariri to delay his resignation like this after meeting with Lebanon's president potentially throws everything into even more unpredictable chaos. Meanwhile, Lebanon is rallying troops along the border with Israel, claiming on Twitter that so-called Israeli violations are pushing matters to war. Israel totally denies these allegations. In fact, though Israel does take military action to prevent Hezbollah threats of terror, most agree that neither side are really interested in a fresh conflict at this time.
Well, it's been less than 24 hours since an Israeli lawmaker basically came out and said that Israel has secret ties with the Saudis, and Saudi Arabia's foreign minister is already denying any such relationship. Well, Iran says it can see through the denial and is now accusing Saudi Arabia of pushing a so-called Zionist agenda. ILTV's Aaron Pors has more on the story. Now, Aaron, what is the deal here?
So for those who've been following the story with us, we know that it was pretty obvious that Saudi Arabia would probably come out and deny the allegations that they're cooperating with Israel. It was really quite expected. That being said, whether or not our relationship is real, the issue now is how Iran is interjecting and seeing things their own way.
So this Zionist agenda that they call it, what is Iran getting at here?
So I wouldn't be too terribly worried about that in and of itself, simply because any country seen cooperating with Israel will, in Iran's eyes, be forwarding the Zionist agenda.
Right.
That being said, again, going back to actual relations with Saudi Arabia, if Saudi Arabia and Israel relationship is real, then Iran is threatening that right now by calling it out and putting it out in public. If it's not real, then Iran is threatening it by bringing it out and calling it in public and showing Saudi Arabia just what they might have to lose or what they might fight in order to create that relationship. The truth is that none of these Arab countries, just like Israel and many Israeli officials have said in the past, none of these Arab countries are really ready to take their finger off of the red button when it comes to Israel. But I'll get to that in my report right now.
Years of rumors about a secret Saudi-Israeli friendship have been all but confirmed lately. A few days ago, the IDF chief of staff even gave an unprecedented interview to a Saudi news outlet, saying that Israel was ready to share its intel with the Saudis against the mutual enemy of Iran. But Saudi Foreign Minister Adel al-Jubeir is now saying that, quote, there are no relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, end quote. We should probably take his word with a grain of salt, though. Israeli politicians have pointed out that many of Israel's secret ties with Arab countries can't be made public yet, because the Muslim-majority nations simply aren't ready to publicly align themselves with Israel. That's exactly what Iran is picking on now, though, accusing the Saudis of, quote, following the policy of the Zionist regime which seeks to stoke divisions, end quote, among the Arab nations. So, since it isn't quite official yet, we'll just have to call this relationship, it's complicated.
Top leaders from Hamas and the Palestinian Authority are now in Cairo for a marathon of fresh reconciliation talks, all in the quest for a Palestinian unity government. Now, the United Nations is saying that these talks must not be allowed to fail because if they do, a whole new war with Israel would probably be just around the corner. We've been seeing both progress and stumbling blocks in the road to Palestinian unity, but clearly the stakes for these coming days couldn't be higher. That's because some of the biggest issues to iron out still have yet to be decided. PA and Hamas leaders are expected to talk about the actual structuring of how a unity government would look, as well as the possibility of free elections, which haven't happened in Gaza in nearly 10 years. Perhaps the biggest question mark, however, is what will happen with Hamas's massive 25,000-man army. PA President Mahmoud Abbas has repeatedly implied that the army will need to be dissolved, similar to Israeli and American demands in order to recognize this unity at all. But Hamas has fiercely refused to lay down its weapons, nor even recognize the Jewish state. So clearly, there are some major debates still ahead. All right, an Israeli soldier has been injured after his army vehicle came under fire while traveling along the border with Egypt. The IDF suspects the gunfire was actually just part of the spillover from internal fighting within Egypt, however. Egyptian forces in a Sinai-based Islamic State-affiliated group have been battling it out on the border near Israel for years, with Islamic State gunmen attacking Egyptian guards on a regular basis. Back in 2013, Israel spent a whopping $400 million to build a 245-mile fence along the border with Egypt, one of the largest construction projects in Israeli history. And now it looks like that fence is more necessary than ever. The soldier who was injured in yesterday's incident is now being treated in a Beersheba hospital for his wounds. With this spillover in the south, we're also seeing action on Israel's northern front, where Israeli tanks have just fired warning shots into Syria for the second day in a row. The army says the Syrian army is violating the ceasefire zones and getting dangerously close to Israel's Golan border. It's rare to see Israeli artillery fire like this, even as a warning shot. But given the ramping tensions with Syria over the last few weeks, things may just be getting started. It has just been revealed that 3 Syrian rebels who were wounded last week in a chemical weapons attack are being treated here in Israel. Now, this obviously isn't the first case of wounded Syrians being treated in Israeli hospitals, but it may be the first confirmed one by the Jerusalem Post. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's forces have reportedly thrown an explosive drum containing toxic gases on Bardaya Hill, a strategic site in Syria controlled by rebels. The chemicals are believed to be chlorine, which has been used by the regime in the past. 3 Syrian casualties have allegedly been transferred to the Ziv Medical Center in northern Israel, but the hospital has not responded to any inquiries regarding their arrival. This particular attack is part of an ongoing offensive by the Syrian government and its Hezbollah allies to recapture territory near the Golan Heights. More than 3,000 Syrians have entered Israel for medical care in the past 4 years, and in early April, Intelligence Minister Israel Katz advocated for aiding even more children who were victims of chemical weapons attacks just like this one. A pardon from Israeli President Reuven Rivlin was the last-ditch hope for Elor Azaria, the former IDF soldier who was convicted earlier this year for killing a Palestinian attacker that had already been immobilized in the West Bank. Those hopes have just come crashing down now that President Rivlin has officially rejected Azaria's request for a pardon from jail. Azaria will now serve out the remainder of his 14 months in jail on manslaughter charges. This is only the latest controversial decision in a case that has fiercely divided the country since last year when hidden camera footage of Azaria committing the murder went viral, capturing global attention. The tape shows Azaria, an army medic in Hebron at the time, delivering a fatal headshot to a Palestinian man lying on the ground who had already been neutralized after attempting to carry out a terror attack. Many called for the harshest sentence possible for cold-blooded murder, while others hailed Azaria as a, quote, hero. And now that all hope of a pardon has been dashed, these are some of the same reactions being leveled against President Rivlin himself. Police are now investigating a flood of troubling social media posts, some featuring photoshopped images of Rivlin wearing an Arabic kafia, and others calling him a damn Nazi for rejecting Azaria's plea. This is a case that may have seemed to finally be winding down, but clearly it's going to take a while for certain wounds to heal.
Now, we've seen some initial stumbling, but now the first real promise of the ongoing Palestinian reconciliation deal has just become a shocking reality. A decade after the Palestinian Authority lost control of Gaza to Hamas, the PA has just reopened the Rafah border crossing with Egypt into and out of the Gaza Strip. This is not only a staggering demonstration of just how far the PA's talks with Hamas have come, but also a potentially life-saving move. Thousands of Gazans have been waiting years for critical medical treatment and humanitarian aid to come into the Strip, aid that the PA has specifically denied Gaza, forcing Hamas into the current negotiations. At least 30,000 Gaza citizens have applied for permits to enter Egypt in the last few months alone, many of them praying for an escape from the crumbling Gaza conditions.
أنا رايح العلاج أتعالج وأستنى في هذا اليوم اللي أتمنى إني أروح فيه على دكتور في العيون لأنه هنا في غزة ما فيش إمكانيات فيش عندنا إمكانيات يحك من عيني فأنا أطلب من الله ومن الحكومة إنه يظل على طول ألحق أتحكم وأرجع على طول لبيتي ولأسرتي.
The Rafah border crossing is a spot where Egyptian, Israeli, and now PA security all overlap to ensure safety. A difficult task given the rise in Islamic extremists on the Egyptian side. After being opened and closed in bursts for years, it currently accepts crossings 3 times a week. The PA is hoping to reopen it full-time, though, once things are up and running. The murder of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin rocked the world to its core over 20 years ago, and even today, many Israelis are still feeling the shockwaves. Well, those wounds are about to be reopened. Yigal Amir, the man convicted of assassinating Rabin, is now filing for a retrial, saying he didn't fire the bullets that killed the prime minister that fateful night.
Yigal Amir, a right-wing Israeli extremist, was caught on tape pulling a gun mere feet away from Rabin at the now infamous Tel Aviv rally that was meant to celebrate the Oslo Peace Accords. 3 shots were fired, and less than 40 minutes later, Rabin was pronounced dead. Amir was given a life sentence for the murder that he proudly confessed to, even walking police and reporters through a reenactment of how he pulled it off. Given the evidence, Amir's plea for a retrial is a shocking turn of events. Amir is apparently preparing to testify that although he did intend to kill Rabin that day, someone else allegedly did the job for him just moments before he pulled the trigger. That's why his legal team is appealing for the murder charges to be lessened to merely attempted murder. Amir's wife has even claimed on Facebook that the team allegedly possesses no less than 18 pieces of evidence proving Yigal Amir's bullets, quote, were not those that caused Rabin's death, end quote. These are the kinds of statements that have been fueling conspiracy theorists for years over Rabin's murder, but it remains to be seen if these are wounds the Israeli courts will actually be willing to reopen.
So Israelis may not party hard like Americans on New Year's Eve. That's what Rosh Hashanah is for, but it looks like this year they've got their own reason to celebrate. And that's because Season 2 of the hit Israeli series Fauda is premiering just in time for 2018. ILTV's Manuel Kadosh has the scoop.
While some say New Year's Eve, or Sylvester in Hebrew, is the most eventful night of the year, Israelis definitely don't party as hard as you'd expect when the ball drops. Sure, they have their fair share of fun and of course a midnight kiss, but it's far from the all-out celebration you'll see in America. But this year, Israelis across the country might have an even better New Year's Eve option. The second season of the international hit Fauda will air on December 31st, just in time for the holiday. Tuesday. The series follows IDF intelligence officers, and after the first season was a smash, Netflix picked it up for a worldwide streaming. Israel's getting the first look at season 2. Everyone else will have to wait at least a few more months for Netflix to stream the new episodes. But if you're looking for spoilers, one of the show's creators, Elor Azaria, can only promise that season 2 is, quote, going to have a lot of action. So, if you're not in the mood to run around the city waiting for cabs all night, here's a pretty awesome plan B for your New Year's festivities.
And up now, singer Nick Cave has landed in Israel in a big blow against the BDS movement, and ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here to give us some more details.
Yes, well, Australian singer-songwriter Nick Cave has landed in the Holy Land and already hit the stage last night for the first of 2 sold-out shows. The singer actually decided to come to Israel specifically to shut down attempts by BDS to silence artists. British musician Brian Eno actually initially wanted Cave to sign a pro-Palestinian petition in order to boycott performances in the Holy Land, to which Nick Cave responded, quote, "In a certain way, the BDS movement is responsible for my coming to Israel." The Aussie rocker went on to mention that many artists are afraid of public humiliation from specifically Roger Waters that would be caused due to performing in Israel.
Well, we're definitely happy about his visit here. I think it really shows artists worldwide what it means to take a stand for what you believe in, no matter what.
Yes, definitely. Well, interestingly enough, the petition actually made Cave feel bad in a way, saying that regardless of not signing the petition, the singer still hasn't appeared in Israel for something like 20 years. He also went on to say he likes Israel and Israelis, and that it was important for him to do something about the matter, saying, quote, "It was important for me to come out against the silencing of artists. I think it's really brave of him. You know, we see a lot of artists actually have planned performances in Israel, and people get excited, but at the end, something always comes up, and that something usually has to do with the BDS movement. So people are scared to come and perform here because they feel it might, you know, make too much of a statement, when in fact Nick Cave's statement says it all: stop silencing artists."
Absolutely. I mean, I think there has to be a separation between, you know, art, music, culture, and politics, right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
Tennis star Serena Williams usually makes the headlines for her killer athletic abilities, but this time around, Israeli fans are celebrating her latest fashion choice for one of the most important events in her life. ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here for the details.
Yes, well, tennis champ Serena Williams tied the knot earlier this month to Reddit co-founder Alexis Ohanian in New Orleans, while the bride herself wore a white Sarah Burton for Alexander McQueen gown, and then later switched into a Versace gown. Her 6-person bridal party were decked out in Israeli designer Galia Lahav's stunning work. Lahav is known for her illusion backs and Italian ivory lace details on her gowns made here in Israel, and created cream-colored custom gowns for each bridesmaid at the event.
Well, this is a major, you know, source of exposure for Galia Lahav. We already knew who she was, but this is a really big deal. And this isn't the first time she's designed for major Hollywood stars, right?
No, she, not at all. Galia Lahav has actually become a pretty well-known name around the celebrity stylists in Hollywood. She's dressed Ciara for Billboard Music Awards in a stunning black, one-shoulder, very leggy dress. She designed the dress that Jane Wu wore for the 2016 Oscars, Jennifer Lopez, Vanessa Hudgens, Keke Palmer, Juliana Rancic, Avi News, Kimco Glenn from Orange is the New Black. I mean, an endless amount of A-list celebs have been dressed in her stunning design. So I think it's safe to say that this is just the start. She actually has more than 40 stores in Europe, Australia, and the United States that sell her designs, and she holds frequent trunk shows across the world for anyone interested in a masterpiece of hers.
Well, it's incredible, and it's always so proud for us to see Israeli designers kind of getting that recognition that they've worked so hard for from here in Israel. Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
Thanks.
That's it for this week's Roundup. Tune in next Friday for our next episode of This Week in Israel. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from Tel Aviv.